thought you already did.
No, no, we're back now. So we are back from our discussion that we had with a bunch of people on the rationality rules and the ACA. Now we're going to be talking to Chad Eckard, I guess is I pronounce it Eckard.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's good enough.
And you've been for the last like 6 days or so wanting to have a conversation about my favorite subject in the entire world. Something that I've just started recently talking about: atheism and agnosticism.
Yeah, right.
And I have no. And by the way, I have no idea what your positions are. I have no idea what your counters are. I'm going into this blind, and I'm happy to do so. So why don't you tell me what we want to have a
Well,
discussion,
uh,
and let's go from there. I'm down. Let's do it.
okay. Well,
And drink.
first let me abate any fears.
Oh, I'm
First
not
point out of
scared.
the out here is that I don't normally drink, and so I had a 6-pack for this whole weekend, of which I've already finished 4 of them. So I'm
Nice.
not doing so well.
Well, we're,
Anyway,
we're on the same
uh,
level then, because
and that's and then, yeah, okay.
I
So
got the good
and
stuff.
then
Okay.
secondly, I'm an air service technician. So this is a hobby of mine.
Here's
Uh,
sir.
I, I've been in this sort of atheist community since the beginning. My favorite was the atheist experience, and that's what kind of got me started in it, along with Seth Andrews and David Smalley,
Mm-hmm. They
those
both
kind
have
of
been
guys. So,
guests on the non sequitur show.
David.
and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then a while ago, a long time ago. Sorry if this is bringing up any bad memories, but Dragnot uh, and those guys, I sort of gotten in, and then I saw you, and then it transition to the non sequitur show here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm at.
Okay.
Um, so I listen when I can, but as far as the atheist agnostic situation goes, I first want to say that philosophically,
This is
I
my
can't
thinking, my
argue.
position, by the way.
I particularly can't necessarily argue against it. What I'm going to try to do is say that I think that it's limited, meaning that I think that the consensus on the philosophical question of what atheism is, what theism is, what agnosticism is the consensus of what that is. And anybody that's arguing against that is just saying, well, I mean, I think that's stupid. But what I'd like to say is that moving forward, is that we can do better. Like, I don't think that it's the end all be all. Like, I think that it doesn't 100% capture the ideas of atheism, agnosticism, and theism.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is to say that if I talk specifically logically, like, let's talk a proposition. So God exists. I believe P, right? And then the dichotomy of that is not P. And when you're talking like this, I what, you agree with it? You agree with? You disagree with that
No,
already?
I'm with
Okay.
you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Ignore
I don't know
TJ. I'm
how
going to
you
mute
can
TJ.
disagree with that.
Yeah.
No, it was.
Does anybody
I think that was
disagree
Tuttle.
that there's God or not God?
I'm with you so far. Go ahead.
Okay, so nobody disagrees with that there's God or not God, right?
I'm looking. Go ahead.
Okay, P or not P.
To
If
pee
somebody
or not to
disagrees
pee?
with that, I don't know
That
where
is
to
the
go.
question when you've been drinking.
Yeah, right. Okay. So now I got to put myself together here.
Think about your pee. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll probably have to pee.
I got
soon
this down
with
in
all
art form. I could do this plastered. Okay, trust me. Go ahead.
like I said, I'm an air service technician, so give me a break.
Do your thing, baby.
The idea that God, not God, right, is theism, and then when you relate it to theism, agnosticism, atheism, right? What are you specifically, Steve, saying that atheism, agnosticism, and theism is in that relation to logic? So if I were to suggest that God exists, right, and then I would say God does not exist, what is agnosticism?
Okay, so my young Padawan, let me explain to you the epistemic
In
statuses.
your opinion.
Yeah. Let me relate to you the epistemic statuses with relationship to a proposition. For any given proposition, would you agree that the logical in the middle would apply in classical logic, that that proposition, if it's truth apt, could be either true or false? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Yes.
there are three possible, generally speaking, there's three possible epistemic dispositions toward that. There's the belief that the proposition is true. We'll call that beliefs P. There's the disbelief that the proposition is true. We call that not P. And there's
Correct.
the suspension of judgment, which would be the epistemic status of not believing either P is true or false. Would you agree with that? I can
Yes.
I can repeat. Okay, so if you have a proposition, let's say the proposition TJ's bald. Okay, so I'm looking at the sheen off his head. It was just right in my face. So TJ's bald. That's either an ontologically true or false statement. Would you agree? He either is bald or isn't.
Sure.
And he's not really that bald, but we're going to, for the sake of argument, say okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so
Yes.
if it's true that you believe that, right, then you believe that the proposition is the case, right? If you disbelieve it, you believe that is not the position that ontologically is bald. Or you could have no opinion either way. You could say that I don't think that I can answer the question, therefore I'm not saying that he's bald, I'm not saying that he's not bald, you've suspended judgment on it. So you have true, false, and neither, which would be not believe P and not believe not P. Right? So
Sure.
those are the three epistemic statuses. When you're talking about the logic, that's how it would be relating to theism and atheism. In the literature, theism is the proposition that God exists, or at least one God exists. Atheism is the disbelief or the acceptance of the negation. That means the belief that God does not exist. And agnosticism would be the case in that case that does not believe that it's true and does not believe it's false. That's how the paradigm.
Okay, so not
that's the
God
paradigmatic
and not
answer to this question.
So,
Nicholas,
so
by the
what
way,
I'm
a philosopher's in here, Nicholas. Philosopher. By the way,
It's always in quotes with me. Yes.
if I say anything incorrectly, please correct me. But so far, have I said anything to your standards that is absolutely incorrect according to literature?
There's nothing incorrect at all, and nothing incorrect.
Okay.
Okay, so let me go back to the agnosticism, right? So I think we can all agree that theist is pretty easy, right? I believe there is a God, right?
Okay.
I believe P, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty simple. Nobody can really argue that.
Nope.
Okay. And then atheist. So what you're equating atheist to is the not P position.
Yes.
Correct?
According to Stanford Encyclopedia, Cambridge, Oxford, and many other sources, yes.
So not P, not God.
The belief that not P is true. Yeah.
I believe there is no God.
Correct.
The P is not evident. Right. Okay. In agnosticism, are you saying that I neither believe nor disbelieve in a God?
Yes, and that's exactly. By the way, I think it's Wiki that actually says that agnosticism is neither the belief nor disbelief that God exists. I think that literally what it says verbatim, if I remember correctly.
And so, if where I'm questioning, right, is that it seems logical to me, all those things that I just stated, and what you have stated. Where I'm get confused at is on the very specifics of the logic. So if I say not P and not P, right, that's where the confusion comes from me. Because if I say not P, right, that's atheism. If I say not P, that's theism. Right?
So
it's not a real... If you were to say that you are agnostic, to me, in logic, it would mean that you are directly in between and would be 50%.
No.
And would say that there's no bias towards P and no bias towards
because that's a gradient, right? I could lean more one way to the other without holding a belief. I can say I'm more likely to be the case. For example, if I have a deck of cards, right? I got 52 deck of cards, right? 52 cards in my deck. There's black and there's red. I shuffle them. I take the top card as black. Would you agree that the likelihood, minute as it is, whatever it is statistically, you can figure it out, that the next card is more likely to be red because there's one less black card? Would you say that's a probabilistically true?
Well, it would have to be.
Right, because of math, right? But would you believe that the next card is going to be read? No, because it's not reached that point of probabilistic for you to warrant sufficient justification to hold that belief. So you can lean one way more than another. You can say, yeah, it is probably more likely the case it's going to be read, but I don't believe that's going to be read because it's an unjustified belief, right?
So you basically what you're saying is agnosticism is a spectrum of
it's a range.
A range of belief and non-belief.
No, it is a range between the positions of believing and disbelieving. So I can lean one way more another. I can say, you know what, it's probably more likely God exists, or I can say it's probably more likely that he doesn't exist, but I don't have enough justificatory conditions or justification to say one way or another to conclude a belief, right? I'm not justified to believe one or another. It's very similar to flipping a coin. Flipping a coin would be a guess, right? That's strictly stochastic. So if I said, hey, Chad, if I flip a coin, if it lands head, God exists. If I flip it and it lands tail, God does not exist. I flip it, it's heads, and I go, oh, look, I believe God exists now. Do you think that is a justifiable way to rationalize your position, to make your belief justified? The answer is going to be no, because guessing is equivalent to a guess, and guesses are never justified.
Yeah. Right, which is kind of the point, to be honest with you. Where I know I'm not possibly. I want to be able to explain myself in a clear fashion.
You're doing okay. I gotta admit, you're doing fine.
Unfortunately, I am not versed in these things. I don't have a degree. Like I said, I'm a mechanic, but I just find it very interesting that we have this sort of middle ground in a way that has been designated as agnosticism. And I find myself thinking to myself, okay, was there a point in time where I was agnostic on the proposition of God? And
what's your stance now, if I can ask? I don't mean to interrupt, but what's your stance now? Do you hold the belief there are no gods?
Yes, I'm what I think most people would call today hard atheist.
Okay. So but you do understand there are atheists out there that are just soft atheists,
no gods. But there really is no gods.
Okay, so you're convinced there's no gods. Fair, granted, but you do acknowledge there are atheists out there that exist that don't take that position. They merely say, I don't believe, but I'm not going to go so far to say that I don't.
I've had that position.
Okay, that position is agnosticism in philosophy. If you can understand that,
right.
So that's what the middle ground is. A weak atheist is a middle ground position. They're a fence sitter. You agree with that?
Right, I agree.
Okay, good.
But
okay.
I agree, but I think that
progress here. This is awesome.
Okay, so now wait. Okay, so
I love these discussions.
That's the point I wanted to make.
Daniel's having a conniption fit, but it's okay.
I'm sorry. The point that I really wanted to make was that I think that
be good friends.
Talking in a philosophical sense amongst other philosophers, meaning that they have some sort of educational background in philosophy, that this is inefficient. It's inadequate to describe someone's position. So if I can only use the words theist, agnostic, and atheist,
no,
right?
There's other positions out there.
Everyone would be an agnostic, except for those that say there is a God, there are no gods.
No, there are other positions. For example, a person who's never heard of the proposition, right? They're not agnostic on the proposition. They're not theist on the proposition. They're not atheistic on the proposition. They're none of the above. They would be considered to be one of a couple different things. Graham Oppy,
they would be ignorant of the proposition.
They're ignorant. Exact. Thank you. They're ignorant of the proposition. So Graham Oppy calls that position, he calls it innocence.
Ichtheist.
No, not ichtheist. He calls it innocence.
Oh, yeah.
Or innocent.
Okay.
And then Dr. Malik, who wrote a paper called Defining Atheism and the Bird of Proof, he calls them uninitiated. I like that term, uninitiated. Either one's fine, but that is because if you have no knowledge of the proposition, right, you clearly have no epistemic dispositions toward that proposition because there's no burden of proof to be had in any way, right? So you're innocent. But there are other people out there that say, look, I don't even know what the hell the proposition is. They say, I don't think that it is a proposition. I think that all God talk is cognitively meaningless. I think that that God exists is nonsense. It doesn't even express an actual truth proposition. We call that either atheism, or technically that's more what's called theological non-cognitivism, right?
Sure.
So the theological non-cognitivist who's saying, I just don't think that there's any propositional value to be had here to attach to this proposition, they're not agnostic on it. They've weighed in. They have a second order belief. They have a position with respect to the proposition, but they're not agnostic on it. They haven't suspended judgment. What they've said is there's no judgment to be had. There's some very distinct nuances here, though. You see that?
I'm moving towards non-cognitivist positions because I don't. It's just
then you want to be an atheist.
Yes, that's true. That's fine. If I can give up the label atheist, fine. I'm just saying that logically, it doesn't seem to make sense to me because if you have a position and a non-position, how can you be like you're saying that you can't go to one way or the other, and that means that this is evidential. So this is epistemological. You have to say that I have not enough evidence, or my brain just for some reason isn't working in a way that's going to convince me one way or the other. I'm stuck in between.
That's not a brain issue. There's something called evidential agnosticism, believe it or not. There's also evidential atheism. But when you're saying to the lines of look, I don't have enough information to evaluate it either way. The best course of action is to just not evaluate it. I don't have an issue with that, right? Because that's what agnosticism really is. You don't have enough information to evaluate either way. Now, let me ask real quick before we continue. I'm kind of curious because, like the other day, Aaron had said that he's never met an atheist that believes gods don't exist, or he holds that atheism is the belief that God doesn't exist. And I'm like, Aaron, you had a discussion with Ozzy. He holds this position. And I've actually had numerous atheists have told me, atheists don't go around saying they believe gods don't exist. I was like, they don't come to my live chat. I got mods who believes gods don't exist. There's nothing wrong with that. It's justifiable. You can make an argument of a case for that. Now, you're somebody who believes that God does not exist. Let me ask the rest of the people here. For the atheist, TJ, do you believe? TJ, I'm going to unmute you now because you're going nuts. Do you believe that gods don't exist? Are you an atheist now?
No,
No. Okay.
We've talked about this. We've talked about this before. I believe that if you are presenting a specific definition of a God and you're asking me to believe or assign a truth value, P or not P, to that value, I'm going to say, no, I don't believe that value.
Okay, but that's not my question. Are you a hard atheist? Real quick, are you a soft or hard atheist?
That's soft atheism.
That's soft atheism so far, but I don't want a straw man, so I really want them to tell me their positions rather than me to assign them a position, right?
No, if you say like,
no, what I'm going to say, what position? Tell me what your position is, soft or hard atheism.
Any God. No, if you're saying any God, no, I'm not saying I'm going to assign a truth value to that.
I'm not asking you for a truth value, TJ. I'm asking you to tell me what your position is, hard or soft atheism. This is not a difficult question. Come on.
It isn't. Well, there's nuance to that.
Okay, you're done. Okay, TJ, go. You need to go talk to Jim because this is not a difficult question. No. May, are you a soft or hard atheist?
I think there is no nuance to this. I think that either you're an atheist or you're a theist. You can be agnostic. However, you would have to explain your agnosticism.
He's not a theist. TJ is an atheist, right? TJ is an atheist. He's not a theist. So what kind of atheist is he? Hard or soft? I don't know of any other kind.
Specifically described God, I am an atheist in all respects.
So you believe there's no gods?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
You're a soft atheist, right?
That's not what I'm saying.
That's exactly what you're saying.
I know what
you're saying.
Wait. Raise your hand if that is what you think TJ is saying. Raise your hand.
You're saying, hey, don't talk to me. What I know.
Okay, thank you.
Agnostic.
TJ, listen to me very carefully. If you do, listen, stop. Listen to me very carefully, TJ. If you do not believe the proposition, and that's the only thing you hold to, you're a weak atheist. That's what it entails. So you're a weak atheist, correct?
If there's evidence that should suggest that absence of evidence should be expected.
TJ, you're like a toothache, dude. you're like a toothache. I cannot believe you cannot answer something as just straightforward as, are you a hard or soft atheist? Can I guarantee it? Watch, I'll ask somebody else and they'll answer this fine. Nathaniel, hang on. Nathaniel, are you a hard or soft atheist?
Oh, I'm definitely a soft atheist.
Okay. Fair enough. But
I mean, you already know that.
Yeah,
so.
but we're gonna have that talk with these because I think you do.
Yes,
think,
I know, and you and I are gonna have a fun
I think if I could probably narrow you down, that you do think that all gods are bullshit. But
we have a philosophical discussion that we'll have.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
But I like that with you. Okay, Nicholas, can you hear me?
Like that with
Yeah,
me.
the disembodied voice is still here.
All right, so you hard or soft? Okay, this sounds weird. This is no.
Are you hard?
Don't ask me this question because I'll answer in a different capacity right now. But
I'm not currently a hard atheist. I will make the girlfriend is in the other room. It's possible later.
Okay, giggity. All right, so Nick, what about you?
Hard atheist.
Hard atheist. Okay, Kali.
Oh, okay. So I'm just wondering, are you basically saying that if somebody is a theist or if they are a strong atheist, that means that they have to make like an ontological truth claim? Like this is.
Well, it's a belief claim. Belief claims are ontological truth claims.
Yeah.
But I'm asking you, what is your position? Before we go further, I just want to know people's positions. Kali, do you believe there's no God?
Okay, so basically, if anybody doesn't have like a truth about,
this is a direct question. Come on, people. I asked. You know how this goes. I asked a direct question.
This goes very largely just on the side. This goes almost to Steve's point about how atheists, myself included, have been so programmed to think a certain way.
Pavlovian responses.
It's painful. It's painful for them to actually try to.
Pavlovian responses because they have to gear their heads because they've been indoctrinated to answer a certain way.
Okay,
when I'm asking a very simple question.
Colin, if you have any doubt whatsoever, that means you're an agnostic.
No, bullshit. Bullshit. That's just
okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
Then.
So
don't put me on Steve.
I do actually believe that there are no gods.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's I'm asking. I'm not trying to be over the top, but it's just
of course.
So you believe there are no gods.
If you have any doubts, is that your definition of agnostic?
You're allowed to have doubts. Doubts have nothing to do with anything.
Okay, sorry.
So you believe that there are no gods?
Yeah, I'm still confused with agnosticism then.
Yeah, well, because what happens is the groups like Atheist Experience and American Atheists put out bullshit. That's why they programmed atheists to think a certain way when it makes no sense. And I'm gonna disambiguate this for you. I promise.
Let me agree with you, Steve, that I have been indoctrinated. Like I literally got my start in this listening to people like Matt Dillahunty talk about this over years.
Yeah, no, dude, I'm with you, and this is why I love having discussions with you.
And thank God too, because they just do a great job, and it's everybody needs
that
service.
You're the kind of person I want to have a conversation like this with because I can disambiguate. But let me finish asking around. Sweet, you are
sorry.
Sweet, actually, by the way, I think this is. I can probably tell people this. Sweet, I actually moved from agnostic to hard atheist by having conversations with me on this.
All right, well, slow that down.
Slow your roll, Steve.
I went from agnostic a while ago to what I considered atheist because years ago, back when the atheist community on YouTube was much more hostile, I guess you would call it, was when I was in my agnostic phase. And so I didn't quite cling on to that in the way that some people do. I was turned off by it because of the militant aspect of what I was seeing as far as the loudest atheists out there. But after a while, I kind of pushed away from it, went back to it several years ago. And it was more involved in the conversation. So people like Cosmic Skeptic and those who were having more intellectual conversations about it were what turned me around from my deistic position and my agnostic position, which was kind of like the same at the same time. I was agnostic, but I considered myself, I still thought there was a higher power out there. From that to what I considered atheism, which was just not believing that there was a God out there. And that all the proposed gods that people had talked about were man-made constructs.
And where are you now?
So I considered that what the community that I had familiarized myself with had called that was agnostic atheism. And it made a lot of sense to me based on what I knew about those words. And so I defined myself that way for a long time. And then talking with people like Steve in the past year and so forth, I understand now on the philosophical side of it those words have a different meaning and a very more specific meaning, which I think is actually a lot more useful. And I coming to understand that, I think that what he's trying to portray and actually get out there is that these specific definitions have a use that other people are kind of, I don't know the word is, like they're diluting it by saying that it can mean just not believing in God, but that opens up to so many possibilities that you don't really know what that person believes.
Mm-hmm.
So in their terminology, when you say I'm an atheist, okay, you don't believe in a God, but we still have no idea what your actual position on in your philosophy is,
right,
as far as that goes. Where in the actual philosophy terms, to say an atheist is somebody who has heard the proposition of a God or gods and rejects it for whatever reason, but they believe that it's not true. That puts a very more, much more specific meaning to that word. And to me, that makes a lot more sense and is a lot more useful. So I think that ideally that's a good thing to use. And I understand that I'm all for normalizing atheism. I was very big into that and I thought it was very important to push that. But I want to be honest in that conversation. And I found that even just entertaining that idea and trying to have that conversation about what the words actually mean and how other people use them ostracizes you really fast from people who are very focused on that agenda of normalizing atheism. And even though we're on the same page, I want to do it from a position of actually understanding the philosophy and not just throwing terms out there and taking a word and saying, I want it to mean what I want it to mean. And everybody needs to adopt this, and I know Steve gets a lot of shit for that because people say that he's trying to push one definition, but I've seen the opposite. He's just saying, I understand that you guys are using it this way. Other people are using it another way. And I think that that's fine. Like, I understand that. And I don't it drives me crazy.
And by the way,
so
that was very
argument
well spoken. You've got this down to an art form now.
Mm-hmm.
You've graduated. You're at the top of the class. Gold star. Yay. We're going to get your diploma from Bible Patriot College somehow or something along those lines. We're going to call you Dr. Heathen. But I still don't know where you stand now. Do you believe there's no gods completely now?
So no, my position is I believe that all proposed gods are human constructs to explain the universe as they don't understand it.
But that doesn't tell me what your overall beliefs are. So do you have a belief that there are no gods? Not this one's proposed, but all gods. Proposed or otherwise.
I remain open-minded. The possibility that there is some higher
not the question.
I'm
taking back your diploma. I'm taking it back.
No, well, you asked me what I believe. I'm again.
And I get that, but let me explain why these are non.
Why can't she say it the way she's saying it?
Because these are non-answers, and let me explain why. When you're talking about possibilities, right? There's something in virtue epistemology called open-mindedness, right? The ability to acquire new information and change your position accordingly, right? Those are called a virtue.
Sure.
Okay, this would be a virtue epistemological approach that I'm going to change my position because I'm not saying that gods are impossible, which is a different proposition, right? If you say gods are impossible, not only are you by implicature saying that you're atheist, hard atheist, you're actually also saying that gods cannot exist in any possible world. That is an entirely different possibility.
That's what I'm getting to.
Right.
So I'm trying to explain. You and I, we talk. So, but I'm trying to explain for everybody else, where I'm coming from. So that idea that I want to put it out there that I'm open. Because people will accuse you all of the time when you're an atheist that you are not open to the idea that it's possible. There's some
that's
sort
a straw
of
man that they do, don't you think? Isn't that theist straw manning you?
Well, yeah. So I'm trying to put it out there that I'm not saying that I believe that it's impossible for that to be the case. I would love to hear some really good argument for that.
Okay, so
and I would be open-minded to it. But my belief and what I assume and what I live my life based on now is the assumption, based on what I know, that there is no higher power out there.
I think it's more of a conclusion than an
every
assumption.
Bit of evidence I've ever seen, and I have to, in an honest way, have to understand that that's not the case.
All right, so let me ask you this. If the proposition is God exists, we're going to go with that for practical simplicity. God exists, right? Gods, more than one God. God used to exist, whatever. But we say gods exist. What is your epistemic disposition toward that proposition? You believe it, disbelieve it, or suspend judgment on it?
The proposition that, I'm sorry.
If the proposition is God exists, what is your epistemic disposition toward it? Your status, it's called. Or your
I don't believe that to be the case based on the evidence presented.
So you have 3 choices here. It's a trichotomy: belief, disbelief, or suspend judgment. Which one do you pick?
I don't believe.
No, I'm not asking you.
I disbelieve.
You have you have choice A, disbelief; choice B, believe; choice C, suspend judgment. A, B, or C? Give me an lemon.
That's what I said. Disbelief.
Disbelief.
I don't believe.
Yeah, I think she answered it.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. My bad. All right, so Nick, and I'm not trying to trap her, but by disbelieving, she's saying there are no gods, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is fine. Which is cool.
I'm saying I believe there are no gods. I'm not saying definitively there are no gods. I'm saying I believe.
That's all that matters. That's perfectly fine. Because when you look at saying you believe there are no gods and saying there are no gods are two different propositions.
Yes.
And you're right on this, by the way, Sweet. And I noticed with theists, what they do is, and I noticed with atheists as well. Matter of fact, it's not just theists. I have seen atheists say, "Well, atheists can't say they believe that there are no gods because that's a knowledge claim." No, it's not. It is a belief claim. It's only a knowledge claim.
Yeah,
You say,
the
I
difference
know.
is I think that I try to express that in an honest way and explain what I actually think and believe rather than label it as something and actually make it more than it is. I'm just literally trying to explain how I feel and what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not agreeing on the terminology that we're using, we can have that conversation to make sure we're speaking the same language. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's more important to get across what we're actually trying to say.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. No, I agree, and I think you articulated it quite well. So, Chad, based on what she was saying, which I agree wholeheartedly with everything she said, when it comes to these positions, right? When she mentioned something along the lines of we use these words, there's specificity involved. There's nuance involved with these positions that American atheists and those groups don't talk about, right? What they want to do is they want to incorporate all people that do not have a belief into the umbrella of atheism, right? That's for political reasons. It's not conspiracy. You can go read Fighting God by Silverman. You can listen to him in Hangouts. You can go read it on SEP even, that these are politically motivated reasons for doing this. Not logical, not philosophical, political. So you talked about logic earlier. She was able to narrow down her epistemic status of disbelief, right? So when we're talking about the actual proposition, all an agnostic is saying, right, is that I do not evaluate the proposition. And going back to a very simple analogy that Dylan had to use this with the gumballs, if I have a jar of gumballs here, you cannot be justified to say that they're odd or even. You can't. No rational way you can justify saying I believe they're odd or even, right? You can hold an irrational belief. But the only rational position I would maintain, if you do not know how many, or even have a reason to believe, I should say no, you don't have any reason to believe that they're even or odd, is to say that I suspend judgment on that. I'm agnostic toward that proposition.
I mean, that's a good argument, Steve. I do appreciate that. Is in that sense, okay, is agnosticism, is being agnostic a positive position?
Yes.
I don't know how to explain it.
No, that's good. No, it's fine. Yes,
because I see it as a positive position because it's
all
not a lack of
positive.
It's not a lack of a position. It's a rejection of both positions
thing, Chad,
of P and not P.
Chad, go if you read On Propositions by Russell, all positions are positive. Yeah. Okay, because you can always word a negative into a positive. But
yeah, sure.
But here's the thing with the positive epistemic claim. Agnosticism is a second order belief, right? It is a belief about a belief. Because not a first order belief.
Agnosticism isn't a belief.
Oh, it is a belief. No, agnosticism is a belief position.
It's a belief, and it's a belief if you describe it in this sense to me, in my opinion, is that you can say that agnosticism is my belief, right? If you agree with the fact that I have no, I cannot be moved to pee, and I cannot be moved to not pee.
Have some more to drink, you will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not what it's saying. The agnostic is not saying that you cannot have your mind
So
changed.
it's not a rejection of both positions.
You know, I'm glad you brought this up. They do define, they do not define, they do say that it's rejection of both positions. But the problem I have with that terminology, this is my own personal thing, so don't take this to heart. This is not something I'm going to back up with the literature.
No, it's not. I'm just curious.
Well, let me finish what I'm going to say first, because this is this is something that is backed up in the literature, and I'm going to tell you my own opinion on it, because I'd like to distinguish between material facts and what I'm opining upon. In the literature, Frege and Geach will talk about something called rejectivism. And rejectivism is the position that when you reject a proposition, it's more than do not accept. It is the acceptance of the negation. Okay, it's rejectivism. There's classical rejectivism, and there's also what's called reflexive rejectivism, which would be more along the lines of I'm just not accepting. So when we say reject, it tends to be the acceptance of the negation. But if you reject both positive and negative, if you reject both the P and not P, then what are you actually really accepting? I understand what they mean by that, and it's in the literature that way. Okay, but to me, I say, so it's more cogent, because even with philosophical terms it gets muddied, that I don't accept either proposition. Either proposition is true or false. I don't accept. I don't say the rejection. I say the non-acceptance.
I find that extremely confusing. Like I get that.
Welcome to my world. I had to learn this shit.
And logically, it makes sense in a way. However, as a human being, right, on a human being level. Right. If I say that I do not believe P, right, that means I believe not P.
No. That's not what it means.
No, I know it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying that on a human level, right, like when somebody rejects something, your natural instinct.
No, I got you. Okay, you know what? You're actually, it's funny. You're actually just
logical. That's not a logical thing.
No,
right?
no. But you're describing a real phenomenon. Okay, it's not a logical thing, but there's a phenomenon which you're exactly describing. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's called negation raising.
Sure.
Have you heard that term?
Yeah, offhandedly. Okay. Like I said, I'm not read. I know the ideas. I don't always know the terminology, because these are things that I've heard over a decade now, right? So it's not. I haven't been formally.
Yeah, it's going to take a while to indoctrinate you.
Trained in these things. However, I have heard them in many different ways by many different people, and so that as I remember, when I hear somebody say something, I can reason it. I understand what they're saying.
Yeah, no, I got you.
But I don't know how to speak about it.
Negation raising is pretty simple. It's actually a perlocutionary effect, right? So when you have what's called a locutionary act, which means I say something, the words I actually say. You have an illocutionary act, which is the intent of the words, right? The illocutionary force. Mm-hmm. Then you have the perlocutionary act, which is the receiver's interpretation or their what they're getting out of it, right? And so when you say something like, hey, Sweet, are you going to go to the party? And Sweet says, no, I don't think I'm going to go. I'm going to interpret that as a negation raising. I'm raising it from the do not to the she's not going to go. My perlocutionary act is I'm negation raising it. That's why it's called nigger raising. That's a speech act thing. That's a psychological thing. Does that make sense?
This is speaking from a speech act theory and like John Searle and
Searle, Austin. Yeah, exactly. John Searle.
Yeah, well, whoever the original guy was too. I can't remember his name. Avery. Yeah, Ozzy. I spoke with Ozzy about this quite a number a couple of years ago, which is actually the one that changed my mind before you. But
he got to you first.
I found myself falling back into it again because this confusion that I have of agnosticism, like it's.
Where do you think your confusion lies?
What's that?
What do you think your confusion lies? Because real quick, I mean, you read my blog, don't you?
It's because.
Well, have you read my? Have you read my Agnosticism 3 Ways?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've read that.
Real quick, there's 3 ways. This is where it gets confusing. Maybe I can disambiguate and then you can answer. There's 3 ways looking at agnosticism in the literature, for the most part. Okay, the first way of looking at it is called a normative epistemic principle. This is what Huxley really had the word coined for. And when a normative epistemic principle was, he felt that neither theist or atheist were justified to have these positions, and he wanted to come up with a framework, a methodology by which to analyze things. It was a very simplistic version of the scientific method. It was very much entailed into, or excuse me, it very much entailed things like evidentialism and logical positivism in some cases. So this was a system. We don't usually use the term agnosticism in that regard any longer. It's kind of archaic, okay? But the other two ways, one of them is an epistemological principle. This is in epistemology. This would be the principle of the knowability of gods. Is God knowable, right? So when they say agnosticism answers the different question, they're talking about the epistemological proposition. They're asking, can you know if gods exist? Okay, that is a legit way to use that word, but again, that's not generally how it's found in the literature. That's a non-normative way of looking at that word. It is used that way, but that's not the normative way. The normative way of looking at agnosticism is a psychological status of being agnostic on the proposition. Okay? And what that means is that you're suspending judgment on the proposition. You do not believe P, you do not believe not P. So when I say agnostic, I am saying that I am not taking a position whether God exists. I'm not taking a position whether God does not exist. It is the weak atheist position. Same thing in that regard.
Right.
Does that help?
Now,
like Nathaniel.
yeah,
He's a fence sitter.
I mean,
He's a fence sitter. You got a fence sitter over here,
yeah.
guys. Why can't you? Why are you atheists picking on me? Go pick on him.
No, don't pick on me. I'm good with
You're a
where I'm
fence
at.
sitter.
You do not pick on me. I am fine where I'm at. You know what? And I'm happy where I'm at in my weak atheism.
Yeah. So you do accept
I
you're
think we
you're
dismissed
As long as you own it.
you're a closet philosophical agnostic, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And you know what? I am, but if in the event, see that has partially to do, and
Here's a question.
Wait,
I am
go ahead,
I am
go
okay
ahead.
with saying this. That has a lot to do with the fact that I, by nature and also by almost by career choice, am an empiricist, and so it's they lock horns pretty well.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm the old. I believe there's a part empiricism and part rationalism. I think that you need a.
Oh, I agree. It's just you can see where the difficulty lies in my
Yeah, I
brain
got you. Dude, we're there.
when I'm looking at a fossil and I'm going, "There's nothing fucking philosophical about this."
Yeah, I'm there with you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me read this real quick. This is something that Alex wrote a long time ago. I take snippets of things.
Alex.
Malpass, Dr. Malpass.
Oh, a Malpass.
But he when we were in the Great Debate community, which by the way I did download all the data, and hopefully I'm going to save that data somewhere because there's some brilliant gems in there. But this was one thing that really stood out to me when he wrote this in the public forum. So this is not like anything private. But he wrote this: the agnostic believes that they have The agnostic believes that they have insufficient evidence to come to a conclusion about whether there's a God or not. So they suspend judgment about the question. They lack a belief about P, and they possess a belief about whether they lack about the belief about P, and maybe also whether it is knowable at all, etc. So it is a belief position, but is what philosophers would call a second order belief, a belief about a belief. And I think that's very telling, because I've argued this before, that agnosticism is a second order belief that requires a second order burden of justification. And I got mocked by Dillahunty and some other people for that, when philosophers were saying, that's what it is. What's the problem here?
Is theism a first order or second order belief?
First.
And agnosticism is a second order belief. How can it be included in theist or atheist beliefs? Agnostic is a completely different
right, because it's not
thing.
Okay, what a first order belief is. Well, look at a first order belief.
That's why I was confused by the logic.
Sure.
The P or not P. There is no in between.
No, I got you. Okay, cool. I'm there with you. Let me disambiguate. There's BP and not BP, right? Either you believe or don't believe. You agree with that? That's dichotomy, right?
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
But we're not talking about that. We're not talking about that dichotomy. Right. What we're talking about is the contradictory between believes P and believes not P. That is not a dichotomy. There is a middle ground there because it's not dichotomous.
Yeah,
so what the agnostic believe.
It's a scale of confidence.
No, listen to me carefully. And I'm going to walk you through this here. But by the way, before I do though, a first order belief is a direct propositional answer to the status to the proposition. So if I say, if God exists, you say that's true, then that is a first order. It is directly related. T, F, first order. But if you say anything else related to that, right, which I don't have a position either way, I suspend judgment, that is now a second order because it's not a direct first order. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're on the same page. So let me look at the logic for you. And we're going to walk you through this step by step, right? Proposition, God exists.
Gonna have to write this down.
Well, no, I think you could. You're smart. I think you do this ahead. If you believe the proposition, you would call that BP. Would you agree? Believes proposition.
Sure.
Okay. If you do not believe it, is do not believe P. We'll call that not believe P.
Right.
Okay. So if you don't believe that proposition, you have not believed P. Now the agnostic does not believe P. Correct?
I don't know. I don't know if they
you're not a
can
theist,
not believe.
The agnostic doesn't believe there's a God. So the agnostic, you're a theist or not a theist?
Hold on, just let me interrupt you
Yes,
one
please.
second. I'll go with you on down the trail, but where my confusion is that where my confusion is that agnosticism is not a single proposition. It's a dual proposition.
No, it's not a proposition at all.
It's a rejection of one and a rejection of the other. It's a rejection of both propositions.
Don't think that way. No. Listen very carefully. You're making a critical mistake here. Theism.
What is it? Because it's not clicking.
Theism and atheism are the propositions. Agnosticism is not a proposition. It's a psychological state.
It is a proposition.
No,
it's a proposition of saying that I cannot come to a conclusion on.
That's not what a proposition is.
Or not.
That's a statement. A proposition is truth apt. It means a proposition can be true or false. Okay, so the proposition, there is a proposition of atheism, right?
Maybe you're right.
Sorry, there is a proposition of agnosticism. That's what I was telling you before, right? The proposition, there's agnostic, the epistemological proposition. That's no ability of God's. We're not talking.
Seems
about
like special pleading.
No, there's no special pleading here, man. I even said to you, the third state.
How can you not have a proposition?
Because agnosticism is a psychological state, not a propositional state. It is the psychological state of being agnostic on P.
Right.
I said that at the beginning.
Which means that by you saying that you're agnostic, right, is saying nothing about P or not P. It's saying this is my psychological state. I just refuse to say whether I have.
Logically, it has a position. It is not. Listen to me very carefully, and this is what I was walking you through. Come down the road with me.
Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll leave you.
You've already agreed that agnostics do not hold P to be true. So you not BP, right? You don't hold the position of that is true. So not BP. I do not believe P. Yes.
Not P. Yes.
Okay.
And not P.
Okay, so that would be not B, not P, right? Does not believe, not P. Okay,
right.
So the agnostic is both those. It's a conjunction. Okay, it is not BP and not B, not P. There you go. That's agnosticism. Wait, logical.
I hate to do this. I gotta bail, guys. But
Nick.
Good to be on again and see you all.
Sorry.
So good luck. It looks like you don't even need a moderator, so that worked out well.
I got it.
Yeah.
Yay.
It's going well. But all right, good to see you all, and I hope to see you again soon.
Philosopher, dude.
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Yes, it was. The only I'd be interested in discussing with you actually the difference between you see, I'm too tired to probably get into this. Hard agnosticism and soft agnosticism and a few other things, but we'll discuss that some other point. You had it. That's the way it is. And what's more importantly is there is more than one way to look at this. You're just sort of saying this is, and what he's talking about actually, it looks like it strips things away. It actually adds things, and it makes it easier to be precise and understand what you're talking about in a way that is stripped by the common knowledge. And I think Steve's position, without trying to put words in his mouth, I think what he's trying to say is, listen, if you want to use these common definitions, great, use them. But if you're going to try to argue and discuss and debate, and that's the one I find hilarious, because I like sort of watching Steve get into his thing, and they're like, well, we're anti-theists, especially with the anti-theists. Like, well, we're using it in the common sense, even though we're making logical, formal arguments against theism, but we're using it in the common sense, and we don't understand why we should be using a formal one. And I think he's just saying you're going to be more precise and get further if
right. And I can tell you this right now.
If those are your goals.
If you ever wanted to take these courses in college, using what the atheist experience has been putting out, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
So
I agree with
that's straight up. That's straight up the truth. You are going to fail if you don't understand it the way I'm explaining it, because I'm explaining it the way you would need to know to learn it in college. Serious as that. It's as simple as that. Okay, fine. I didn't take those courses. I took informal critical thinking in college. I took what's called contemporary rhetoric. It was called critical thinking and contemporary rhetoric, and it dealt a lot in informal logical thinking. But you still have to understand certain concepts, right? If you don't understand these concepts, you're going to flunk. And so you can either do one of two things. You can take what I'm saying, try to learn it, and pass the class, or you can go to, somebody like David Silverman and flunk. I mean, it's that simple, right?
You want to know the frustrating thing, Steve, is that when I listen to you and people like Ozzy talk about these things, right? I'm listening, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
And then you lose the next day, right?
That makes sense. And then when I try to formulate my own sort of understanding of these things, not just to sort of hear somebody's words and go yes, right, and really deeply understand these things in a way that I could talk to explain it to another person, I find myself confused. I know, but I find myself confused on agnosticism because of this. It seems like almost a non sequitur, not the thing.
Where's Dave?
I'm not saying that it is. I'm trying to describe my sort of
I got you,
mental
state. I'm going to show you something. Are you a visual guy? Do you like visual stuff?
I love visuals, man. I'm an artist. Yes. I do things that way.
I love looking at stuff. Never mind. That's a different thing. All right. So okay. Can you see what I'm showing right now?
Yes, you're.
No, Nathaniel, I wasn't referring to you. Fuck off.
I've
seen this. You're a good-looking man. I'll give you props. You're a good-looking man. But it's the beard thing.
I've seen that and made my own.
Okay, so you've seen this before, right?
Yes.
So
and I agree with it.
Okay, so but memorize this really, right? Because what you're doing here is, if you memorize this, and this is view number 2 from Use of Reason by Dr. Malpass, it explains it in a cogent, logical manner. Because what it's saying this, given the proposition of theism, right? You have from 0 to 1, because this is going to be something that's a quantized thing, right? Either you have 0% belief or you have 100% conviction. You agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have no belief whatsoever, you are convinced that all gods are bullshit, you have 0, you would be up here in the nose P. You know there's no God. Now, there's other factors involved in that. They're called tripartite conditions. The proposition has to be true. You have to believe the proposition's true, and you have to be justified. But putting those things to the side, if you're convinced, you can say that you know there's no gods. Then as you move up the spectrum, you have belief conditions, right? And you notice here, belief overlaps here with knowledge. Knowledge is a subset of belief. You have to believe first before you can know something. Same thing for the theist, right? So if they believe the proposition or they know the proposition, right? But in the middle here, there's a little bit of margin between those two where you're just not convinced either way, right? You can't say that you're convinced that gods exist or you're convinced that gods are not exist. So you hold to not BP, you don't believe the proposition, and you don't believe the proposition is false. So you're not BP and you're not B, not P. So all the logic works out. I mean, if somebody wants to, by the way, if you want to go contest, not you, but if somebody wants to go contest this logic with Malpass, be my guest, okay? But this is only one view. I will have a disclaimer. Malpass on his Use of Reason has many different views that are possible. This is only one view. This is view 2, but this is what I will tell you is the most ubiquitous by all stretch of imagination in the literature. That's how they view it.
Right. Okay. And I've made my own sort of chart on my own. Like, this isn't something that I've come from on the internet or from you or from Alex Malpass or whatever, or any books or whatever. And I just made a sort of chart, which ended up being almost very similar to that once. And then when I saw that, when you posted that, I believe it was on one of your blogs, and then I also saw it, I think, on a hangout or something that you were doing, and I was like, that's what I was talking about. But like this sort of middle ground is wide for agnosticism, in my opinion. And I find that with all the information that's out there, that to have an agnostic sort of position confusing, to say the least. logically it makes sense. But when somebody's talking about belief and knowledge, right? Basically, when you say I'm a theist, that's a knowledge claim about God.
Well,
and then when you say I'm an atheist,
wait, stop. That's not
a
a
knowledge claim.
That's not a knowledge
about
claim.
they're not being claimed.
No.
But it says
that's not
right
a hang on, Chad. That's
bring your chart back up. Bring your chart back up.
Okay, but that's not a knowledge claim. If you say
hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but bring your chart back up.
You're gonna have to make me. Okay, got 4 things going on. My friend is giving some amazing information.
Yeah, let him get through what he's trying to say before you cut him off, Steve.
I'm sorry. I'm excited.
No, it's okay.
Hey, I get to moderate. All right.
Yay!
Here I am.
I'm just saying that.
Got to be good at something.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I prefer socks. Try to pick something. All right. So what? Okay. So what here?
Okay. So. Hold on. I got this dang thing here in my way. Sorry. I think I can close that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now. Okay. So. On the left-hand side, you have atheists, and on the right-hand side, you have theists. Okay, and you have K, not P, on the atheist side, and K, P on the theist side, right? Which means no proposition and knows not the proposition, or rejects the proposition. Whatever, I'm saying it wrong, but
I'm following. It's cool.
The K is a knowledge claim.
Yeah, but hang on, but notice. In order to be a theist, you only have to be a belief position, right? You have to believe the proposition is true. If you have hang on. To be a theist, you only have to believe it. It has nothing to do with knowledge. You only have to believe that gods exist, right?
Okay. Right, which is what you're saying is a weak atheist and a weak theist. Is this B, not P?
No. Those are strong positions.
What?
BP is a strong atheist.
I thought KP was the strong atheist.
No. Strong atheist is a belief position. Oh, so we have a problem here. This is, I think, where your problem.
Who's in a knowledge position then? So there's where my confusion comes from.
Yes.
Because I was under the understanding is what you were saying is that to be in a positive position on theist and or atheist is there is no God, there is a God, and that's a knowledge claim. If you have a belief position on it, right, that you also believe that.
Okay, no. Well, hang on. Okay, let me clarify. Let me disambiguate the terms. A weak atheist is somebody who says, I just don't believe. Okay, that's a weak atheist that holds that position as sufficiency.
I don't believe in God.
Yeah, that's sufficiency to be an atheist for that position.
Which is also an agnostic position.
Yeah, well yeah. But a strong atheist will say, I believe that gods don't exist. That's a strong position. Not knowledge. Okay, a strong atheist is somebody who holds a position there are no gods. Not that they know, but they believe.
Okay.
So BP here is the strong atheist. Not BP is a weak atheist. Yep. So agnostic is actually a weak atheist and a weak theist, believe it or not. Logically speaking.
Right, I got you.
Okay. And I have a proof for that if you want to check it out. But
no, I understand.
Okay, so if I'm a strong atheist and I believe the propositions, I believe God exists. As I get more conviction, then I get a knowledge claim out of it. I know God exists, but I also at the same time believe God exists. Right? That's why knowledge is a subset of belief. Okay.
This is the bottom half here that I, for some reason, was not focused on. This believes P and knows P, and where the overlapping of belief into knows P. I see that. So you can believe P or believe not P, and you can know P. That's beyond. But see, there's another confusion for me. Then, if that's true, then if I say that I'm an atheist, right, that doesn't necessarily mean I know there are no gods. That just means I believe there are no gods.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And exactly. Then I would have to further qualify on the atheist. If I said I'm an atheist, and then I would have to further qualify, not only am I an atheist, I know there are no gods. I don't just believe that. Is that what you're saying?
Can you remind me again? I'm really apologize. I mean, I'm distracted. A friend of mine is
That's okay.
We're having a private conversation right now.
I know.
Right.
I apologize. I do tend to not be very interesting.
No, you're fine. It's just I really got some good news just recently. So go ahead.
Oh, okay, awesome. The way I'm seeing this here is then from what you're saying is that this believes position, right, covers all of atheism and all of theism, but not agnosticism.
Well, yeah, because agnostics believes neither one, right?
Right, but okay, and then as far as the knowledge claim goes, is that that's a further qualifier to atheism or theism.
Yeah, it's an epistemic modifier. It's called. Yeah, exactly.
I could say I'm a theist, right? But that's just saying I believe God.
Yes,
but I also say I know God exists.
You still believe, right? We're called. I don't mind this. Hang on. We can call that position. We can call that position. Hang on. We can call that position theistic Gnosticism if you want, or Gnostic theism. I don't care.
Gnosticism.
Okay, that is a position that actually, even though I hate mixing ontology and epistemology, but arguendo, if you're going to mix them, that at least is something that makes sense, because what you're doing is you're saying not only do I not believe, but so not only do I believe, but I also claim that I know, right? Which is a much higher burden of proof than just belief.
Okay.
And by the way, May Ruhi would like to know how your job interview went.
Oh, it went great. Absolutely amazing.
Okay. So real quick, sidetrack. I get to spend time with Ruhi if he's coming down to LA here. We're gonna do some, I think, Benford level experiment, prove that the Earth is flat or something, because we've been disseminating such, we've been NASA shills for so long. We're going to actually prove that the Earth is flat. I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm still hung up on the agnostic thing, but okay.
Really?
Yeah. Steve, you gotta give him credit.
Okay, fine.
He's made steps today.
Baby steps.
It's like waking up in the Matrix, man.
Look,
seriously.
Look, it's another position, right? But it's a heavy statement to make. It's saying that I don't know what the fuck it's saying. It's saying
I don't know. I don't have a position either way.
Well, not P. Fuck not P. Like fuck that shit.
Fuck not P. Look, I think you're over. You do what I do sometimes. You overthink things, because I think you're kind of overthinking
I do that
things
sometimes.
now.
I do that, but I try to understand something in a level where I could explain it to somebody, and I just don't feel like that I could do that.
No, that's cool. No, you're at that level yet. That's fine. You don't have to be, man. You don't get this stuff overnight, dude. The fact that you're making baby steps is amazing. But maybe what's going to happen is this: the more you read about this stuff and read Stanford Encyclopedia, and the more you talk to people, one day it's like that moment you go, "Oh shit!" It just clicks and it all falls into place like dominoes.
If I were to make this rejection of the positions a positive statement, how would I make that a positive statement? And that's where I'm confused. It's because I cannot make agnosticism a positive statement. It's a rejection.
It's a positive statement. No,
I do not, and I do not.
Right, but it's a positive statement because I can say I believe that I'm unjustified to assign a truth value to the proposition. That is a positive statement. You're making a positive claim that you are unjustified to assign a truth value to the proposition. Right.
So that's what you're saying is that you are unjustified to make a claim about the positive position of being a theist.
My car. Look at my car is red. Is that true or false?
I don't know.
Okay, you're agnostic on it. There you go.
That's the only answer.
So how easy that is? That's literally what it's saying.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that what you're saying is that if that's true, right, that means that through all of this, you're saying you still do not have enough
information
to say
I'm like
that the car
Daniel. Him and I both agree. We don't have enough information. we're both philosophical agnostics. Neither one of us has enough information that we feel that justifies us to say there are no gods or that gods exist.
Justify that position.
Yeah.
No, seriously, justify that position.
Oh, you're asking me to. Oh, I got you. You're asking me to justify my agnosticism.
I don't think that you can.
Sure.
Sorry.
There are rational arguments to be had for atheism. If you do a combined probabilistic low probability approach to say, okay, if I'm looking at things like the logical problem of evil, the evidential problem of evil, the divine alliance paradox, divine hiddenness, the moral epistemological arguments, there's a lot of different arguments that why there's individual gods that don't exist, but none of which I can find that really will, to me, have a higher probability that there are no gods as individual arguments. What you do is you do what's called an aggregate, and you say that because I can eliminate these particular gods with these particular arguments, that it is probably more likely the case that gods does not exist. That would justify an atheistic approach. I don't think that level of probabilistic reaches my standard of what I would say justifies me to be convinced that gods do not exist. At the same token, there are some decent questions for atheism dealing with like the Thomist approach as far as arguments from motion, first causality, arguments from consequence. Even though they're not that great of arguments, there is still the point is that if you go regress back far enough, there's either going to be infinite regression, axiomatic assumption, which is a brute fact, or metaphysical necessity. Whatever that metaphysical necessity is, that might be some type of deity, that some kind of god. And the likelihood of either, to me, is in that range between theism and atheism, right? I can't really evaluate either way. There could be some kind of deity. I don't know why we're here. I mean, there's all these unanswered questions. That's not the God of the gaps, by the way. But I am not convinced either way that there is something whatever that metaphysical necessity is, whatever type of reason why we're here, if somebody wants to call it a God, I'm not convinced that doesn't exist.
That's a pretty good justification. However, have you thought about what it would take to convince you otherwise?
Yeah, a really good argument that can actually not just be for individual deities, but for deities as a whole, right? Because like logical problem of evil, I'm convinced that type of omni-god, the Anselm's omni-god, with the omnibenevolent and omnipotent and omniscient and evil existing, it's
really hard to justify that.
That is an inconsistent logical system, meaning that all the propositions can't be true at the same time. I agree with that, right? So that deity, for what I would consider to be falsified, right?
So basically what you're saying is that you haven't ruled out the possibility that there might be some sort of Zeus.
Well, not so much Zeus. I'm not Ocean, right? I'm not Ocean Keltor.
Well, no.
but
I'm just saying that in some of these sort of like
I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, right? I think and I'm talking about our overall ontology, right? When you start looking at the actual ontologies on philosophy, it gets really, really crazy, really, really quick. Yeah. Okay, for example, if I look at something called mereological nihilism, which is the approach that objects do not exist, right? And they're merely just constructs of atomic arrangements. but they really have no real ontology. That's a good argument. But that also leads into what's called metaphysical nihilism. And metaphysical nihilism is a very interesting position because it actually states that there might be a possible world that exists that's empty, that has no concrete objects. Okay?
Yeah.
And if you start thinking about these things, about what it means to exist, right? Do colors exist? Do shapes exist? Do universals exist? Do objects exist?
Yes.
You really get into the nuance of what the terrain of reality is, or what it could be, or what it can't be. And so I don't have any idea of what this terrain is. I only have a map to this terrain. And if the terrain involves something along the lines of a metaphysical necessity that's a deitistic origin, I'm okay with that, right? So I haven't completely ruled that out, and I'm not convinced that it isn't the case. There might be some kind of intelligent order. There might be, and I'm not saying that.
Let me ask you this question then: do you believe that there has to be some sort of empirical or some tangent attachment to our senses that would give us justification for those things? So what I'm saying is that our metaphysics has to follow our physics, right? We have to. We can't just sort of encompass any possibility without some sort of tethering to reality in some sense. And just because I understand that our senses are imperfect and that, all that thing, I can go down that rabbit hole if you want. But
I understand what you're saying, but I kind of disagree. Look, metaphysics exists, right? Metaphysics, it deals with time. Metaphysics deals with knowledge. Metaphysics deals with belief, existentiality. These are all metaphysical concepts, right? And so, when we're talking about existence, right, that has nothing to do with science in that regard, right? We're talking about what it means to exist. Do dreams exist? Do moral facts exist? Right? These are all ontological questions. And I think I am not convinced yet that there is no metaphysical answer that doesn't evolve, that there's no deification involved in some kind of metaphysical answer, because why we exist, why there's something other than nothing, why? And again, I'm not trying to do a God of the gap, so please don't think that I am. But there's a lot of unresolved terrain questions, the territory questions, when it deals with the fundamental aspects of nihilism. And I'm happy in the agnostic state. I'm happy to say I don't have a position either way, right? I'm cool with that. I'm not justified to say one way or another. I just don't believe the theist. I don't believe the atheist. I'm not convinced either way. But what's funny is half of the atheists out there in that position, they're just calling it atheism.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So
and some of them I think
are far-fetched. Nathaniel has that similar position.
No, I mean, I just find it somewhat confusing because I feel like I mean, in my own position, right, I feel like there's so much evidence to say that there cannot be any of these gods that are proposed out there.
Well, that's a different argument.
No, you've already said that, right? Like you've explained that in detail. I understand that.
Okay.
And that's not what you're saying as a whole. You did say that specifically, but I'm saying in your agnostic position, you're not saying that in that sense. Wow, Steve, you're justified in being agnostic. I'm not, I mean, good on you.
Yeah, well, I can't. I put a lot of thought of this stuff. And by the way, real quick, well, Bert,
I personally can't be, because there's no justification for the theistic side. So,
I disagree with that.
I've moved myself to this atheist position because there's nothing.
Okay,
I can't grab a hold of anything.
Well, let me ask you this.
But on the atheist side, I can grab a hold of something. I can say, there's this, there's this, there's this.
I get that. I think you're, dude. I think you're probably. Hang on, I think you're probably justified in your position, right? I'm not saying that you're unjustified. Right. Don't get me wrong. But do you think, because Bert Poole had challenged people, he's like, hey, you know what? Stop arguing with Steve about these definitions. Steve's exactly right. He's talking about his logic's right. Yeah. So I think I'm pretty well have solid footing for all that crap. But he said, if you want to go after Steve, go after his agnosticism about why he's agnostic, which you did, and I'm proud of you for that. You're the first motherfucker in ages that has actually challenged me on that, and I thank you for it, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Well, that's my whole problem, Steve, is that the reason why you confuse me is because I see and I hear the things that you hear on the non sequitur, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, every time I see any kind of theistic argument in any sense that anybody's ever brought, it's just fallen flat.
No, and I'm
like, just
and I don't disagree with you in some regards, right?
Scratch my head sort of thing, right?
Yeah, no, I get that.
Atheists don't always have good arguments, but they have some good arguments.
All right, so let me ask you this, because I'm going to have to be wrapping this up soon.
Sure.
Do you agree, though, I'm not an atheist, and a philosophical, use of the terms?
Steve, are you an atheist?
No.
Okay, you're not an atheist.
That is and I love that, because like for Nathaniel is, weak atheist. He calls it atheist. I'm going to call him an atheist, right? I'm not going to say, oh, you're just a real agnostic in disguise. He recognizes the difference. He understands the concepts. That's all I give a fuck about. What he labels himself is irrelevant to me. He can say he's a fucking, what the fuck is? It doesn't matter to me. Those are just labels, right? I want people to understand the concepts. He gets the concepts, right? So I'm not going to go around saying, you're actually an agnostic calling yourself an atheist, you dumbass. No, I've never done that. And this is what people have accused me of doing. It drives me fucking nuts. If you say you're an atheist and you want to take the the weak atheist position and the lack of belief, okay, we can go argue the problems with that, but I'm still going to put you in that category of atheism, right? Because I understand the way you're using it. But I don't get the same consideration in return. You have given me consideration, and I thank you for that. But there are other people out there that still exist that do not give me that consideration because I'm using philosophical terminology to respect me enough to say, you know what? Steve says he's not an atheist. He's not an atheist. He's an agnostic.
Yeah, no, I think you're on strong footing, Steve. It's my own confusion about it, and it's partially from ignorance. But I do disagree in a sense, but I don't really have any strong arguments. So I'm going to have to go and justify that if I'm going to challenge it.
Well, challenge him too. Over here, Nathaniel.
I thought I could challenge it, which my strongest case at the moment was the sort of logical argument of P and not P, right? This thing where
are you saying that I surprised you that I answered your questions?
Yeah, it's a rejection of both positions to me, and I just find that if you have a rejection of both positions, that in itself is a position.
Mm-hmm.
It's a positive position, mm-hmm. Right? But without that sort of scale that you shown there, it would be slightly unjustified to me to be able to hold an agnostic position, because I think that you would fall on one side or the other.
You're allowed to. You're allowed to. Okay, I don't know if you saw in the diagram there was a line on one of the sides. Did you notice that? That's where Alex actually puts himself. You're allowed to be a little bit more than the other. This is where Dawkins fucks things up. This is where Dawkins confuses people. Oh, an agnostic's 50-50. No. You could, again, with my deck of cards analogy, right? The top card's black, shows it to you. You don't believe the next card's red, even though it's a higher probability. So you can be a little bit, I lean toward, there's no gods. Right? I'm on that side right now of the fence. But doesn't mean
I see what the card
convinced.
Analogy is now. Yeah. I think I slightly misunderstood the card analogy at the beginning. But now after the
card, that it's more likely. You're saying it's more likely, but I'm not convinced it's red.
Yeah. The card analogy actually makes a lot more sense to me now. But I think I had some preconceptions on the card analogy.
Well, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have 52 cards and I turn up all the cards and I got one left, and you've counted all the other cards and you know the next card's red. You're like, oh, I believe the next card's red. You have justification.
No.
Let me finish.
No.
This is good. I just thought of this. This is good. If I show you all the cards, right, and you know how many cards are, half the deck is black, half the deck is red, supposedly, right? And I have one card left, and I say, do you believe that? Let's say, there's been 26 black cards that came up, and 25 red, and I said, the next card, do you believe it's red? What would you say?
Well, I'd have to say yes, right?
Okay,
it's red.
And I would say, okay, and I would say, are you justified to believe that's red?
Yes.
Okay, and I'd ask, what's your justification for it? What's your justificatory conditions?
Because there's 26 red and 26 blacks in a normal 52 card deck.
Okay, perfectly so far. But then I show you the card, and it's a joker.
Right.
That doesn't mean you had all that means, though, is you had a false belief. Who cares? Everything you said was still perfectly right. You were justified to believe it. You had a justified false belief. Mm-hmm. Okay? Nothing wrong with that. So you did everything right, but can you see that even though you might likely have a probabilistic case, it doesn't mean you're still justified to be convinced that it is the case. So yeah.
So what you're saying is that I can't move you at least one way or the other. Right now I've been moving more to the non-existent side, and it's kind of frustrating because when I do more to the non-existent side, and I hear people doing what the ACA did earlier, and the fuckery that the atheists have been coming after me with, I'm like, I don't. And this is personal bias. Don't get me wrong. I'm rational enough to recognize this. I don't want to do with any of those guys, right? I don't want to be associated with people that are doing that kind of stuff, those kind of atheists that I find in the ACA and the American Atheist and Atheist Republic that have that kind of fuckery. I don't want to be involved in that group. And I'm like, let's say hypothetically, I was like, I'm going to change my position to atheism. Not going to happen anytime soon. But to say that I did, I'm like, fuck, now I lump myself into these fuckers are just goddamn stupid. I don't want to be like them. Yeah, sweetie, then you're not one of them. Stop it, Steve. Is that
does that make sense? I mean, what I want people to do is go out and police your own. Tell people about this stuff. Explain to atheists that I'm sorry, Matt. I'm sorry, Arn. I'm sorry, you people out there that have these atheist channels that are putting out bullshit. we're going to hold your feet to the fire, because I guarantee it, there's a lot of more people in the atheist community that are very high up that agree with me than don't. But they're not as spoken about it, I think. Because you can't. How are you going to fight the logic, right? I'm going to fight the. It's evidential. It's objective. You can go look in the literature. You know.
Yeah.
So
it is hard to fight logic, right? You can misunderstand, and be corrected, but it's hard to fight the logic.
No, I've had people say "fuck the logic," and I'm like, "Oh, at that point, you're irrational. I don't even want to talk to you any longer. Why am I having a conversation with you?" Right? Okay. Hang on, I got to type something.
That's okay. Actually, I
got to end this. I'm going to end this because I got plans.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we can do what we do. I have to get going myself.
Well, this was fun, Chad. I do appreciate this. You are the type of person that I really like having conversations with. The fact that you came in inquisitive, you asked great questions, you took on board the information. You weren't here to antagonize. You weren't here to try to impart your understanding of these topics to me.
Fuck you, Steve. You're a freaking atheist.
Yeah, exactly. God damn, what am I doing here? Just a million things here. Live chat. Anything guys want to add to this in the live chat? Before I hang up here?
I was reading a couple of things in there, and no, a lot of people telling you you're wrong. A lot of people saying you're right. So
well, here's the thing. I got to tell you this. All the people that say I'm wrong, I challenge you. To go out and find any way in the literature that demonstrates that I'm incorrect. You like evidence. You're supposed to be the rational ones. You're supposed to be the evidential ones. Nathaniel here is an evidentialist, right? So he would actually be agreeable to this. Why don't you go out and prove me the fuck wrong and give me a citation? Because I have yet to have one of these motherfuckers that tell me I'm wrong give me a proper citation. Not one.
I saw Duke was in the chat for a little bit.
Oh, God. Jesus.
I was trying.
Actually, there was an invitation for Duke to come on, not from
life.
you, and I don't think that would have been a good idea. But he said, "No, I'm out." So
no, I don't. I'm done with Duke. He's comic relief at this point. That's all he is. I keep him around just for lulls.
Total troll.
Yeah, he's.
I think
a troll.
There was a troll who actually asked a fair question. And so trolls every once in a while do actually do things that's why whenever like on my streams and stuff, I let the trolls stay unless they say something that's like really bigoted, because they're funny and they make my views go up.
There's some trolls I keep around. There's some trolls I don't.
Yeah.
Right.
This troll, the troll asked, and I actually would like for you to explain that, because some people haven't heard that. How can an agnostic believe in magic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because here's the reason. Agnosticism, the term agnostic or Gnosticism, is used inside and outside philosophy, and it's used in other types of things. It's polysemous. So when I say I'm agnostic towards a proposition, that proposition could be anything. So if I say, does magic exist, I could be agnostic toward that proposition. Can I not be? I could choose not to take a position on it one way or another.
Yep. And Chad, there were a lot of people who said really great things about you in this conversation.
Chad's awesome. I like him. Can we keep him?
Yeah.
I think I've talked to Chad. You've been here before, though. I look familiar.
One time, briefly, I was in one of your hangouts. It's been months ago now, probably three months ago, maybe.
Yeah.
And
cool.
There were a couple of things where people said some things.
I'm so busy.
And I'm going to show you what I got super excited for. I mean, I got a hard line like you don't even know right now.
I mean,
I'll show you the picture that somebody sent me. You know, it's gonna be, you're gonna blow your mind here. One sec. God damn it! I'm so excited. I don't know what I'm doing here.
What's your name? Nathan? Nathan, is it?
Here,
Nathan.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to see the sexiest fucking thing you've ever seen in your entire life? That I'm gonna be writing here one day.
Steve and Speedo.
I'm so gonna be in this. I'm gonna be in this. I'm gonna ride this like a motherfucker, man. Here we go. Ready?
Dear God.
Oh damn!
Oh no! I saw. I think I've actually seen one of a vehicle similar to that here in Arlington.
So when Ruhif comes down, we're taking a road trip in that motherfucker, man.
Hey, don't leave me quite yet. I'll be right back.
I'm pretty certain that Susan and I
kill
saw.
Me, isn't he? I may not come back alive. This thing does get 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds.
I'm pretty certain Susan and I saw this like model a vehicle last weekend.
Do you? How much do you want to make love to that? Just do you want to?
Oh, we walked by it. I was like,
I want to touch it. I want to touch it so bad.
Yeah.
I definitely want to be inside that.
You do want to be inside that, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't you just like be all over that, sweet? Would you just like just?
I don't think I'd fit in that.
Oh, it's more roomy than you would think. It's kind of like a Volkswagen Beetle, to where you think it's this tiny little thing, but it's more roomy than what you would expect. Those are. Now, it's not to say that, like, I don't think that a person of inordinate size could fit in there.
Well, the last time he came down, he got a nice, I think it was like a Corvette. It was a nice car. It was really nice. We had a decent road trip. We went to Indio, California, a couple, like 100 miles away or something like that. And when we hung out in a bar, I don't know what he's got fully planned, but I enjoy my time with him. He's one of the nicest, most generous, and just amazing people. And he knows his shit about genetics. For a layperson, I mean, he's just, to me, one of the, I hate to say it, but top layperson geneticist that I've ever seen.
Nice.
So
I'd like
you guys
to talk
don't know who he is. He's the one that back in the day, Dr. Tompkins from AIG had written a paper saying that we only had a 70% genomic analysis between apes and chimpanzees and humans. And he recognized that there was a problem with the BLAST program, that there was an error in it. And no, this is not Bill. This is Glenn. I'm not doxing him, but he got him to recognize that there was a problem. Thompson retracted his paper. He did another one and tried to bullshit people by doing an ungapped parameter in BLAST by taking indels and saying instead there was only, usually an indel has a bunch of mutations in it, right? And normally when you do a genomic sequence, one indel counts as one, rather than each individual nucleotide difference. He did it so every single nucleotide difference was a change. Well, that's going to be considered to be a higher differential in the genomic analysis percentage, right? So his second run, we were only 80 to 85% the same as chimps, right? It was dishonest as shit. You know what I'm talking about, Nathaniel? You're nodding your head?
I do. I actually,
this
Susan
was Glenn
and I,
that actually called him out on this and got him to fix this shit. So he knows his shit.
I actually used Glenn against Tompkins in person. Susan and I, our first date was at
you
a
dated
church.
Glenn?
No, Susan.
Oh, okay.
My partner. I would date Glenn probably.
I would date
Susan,
Glenn.
Susan and I, our first date was actually like, it's like a first date evening. Part of it was spent at a church because Tompkins was there.
Really?
He's with ICR now, which is right down the road from us here in Arlington. And so you say weird first date. You don't know me and Susan very well.
I don't judge. No, I don't judge.
And
freaky shit.
but we went there, and he was actually talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was speaking because he was trying to say how we're not really, well, here's our genetic relation to this other stuff, right? And so I know what Glenn said about that too, and I also had my understanding of the way that, because Tompkins has only ever written any actual papers have ever been published about like soybeans and stuff like that.
Yeah,
he's never
he's a botanist. Yeah, and I guess he did.
Yeah.
Well, all due respect, I hear
Very
the
good.
experts that he actually really does know his stuff when it comes to genomic analysis.
Oh yeah,
in botany, right? When he does the sequencing, but why he fucks it up with chimps, I think it's got to be on the fact that he's being dishonest.
He is, because I asked him very specifically, and I have this was recorded. I asked him very specifically about a certain genomic sequence, and then I asked him very specifically about one of his claims regarding the findings of fossils, and I asked him about the difference between a valgus knee and the basic femoral petular connection we have in our knee, and how it's different. And he didn't have any idea. I rendered both
I don't either, to be honest with you. I don't know what that is.
Well, no, and I wouldn't expect a layperson necessarily to know that. But
I know my limits, dude. I'm the first person to go, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about at the time. I don't mind saying that. There are some people that hate saying that. They refuse to tell people they don't know shit. I'm the opposite. I'm like, I don't know shit what the fuck you're saying. Tell me.
And he actually looked at me, and part of it had to do with the genomic sequencing. And I asked him about a certain, the way that he actually stated in his paper, because I've read it more than once, because Tompkins, again, is right down the fucking road from me down here. Well,
Glenn and I want to go talk to him one of these days. But,
oh, you're coming to DFW then. That's where we are.
I mean, we have discussed going to Texas and literally knocking on ICR's door and going, "Hey, Tompkins."
You can. They'll talk to you.
Yeah, no, I know. We've actually discussed this. But if I ever talk, I do got to end this. But the only thing about Tompkins I really want to talk to him about, or have Hugh have talked to him about, was human chromosome number 2 fusion site that he has bullshitted people on for how long now? I'm straight up, Tompkins, you're a fucking liar. Because I've read your work. Other people have read your work that are experts. We've all and I believe the experts on this because they're making sense to me, and I actually kind of do get the understanding of it. There is no goddamn way a person of his caliber is trying to convince people with a. If you look at real quick before we end this, we have a diploid number of 2n46, and all other members of Hominidae is 48. So there's a reason why we have a different chromosome number. The reason being is because there's been a human chromosome fusion back millions of years ago, and that was on human chromosome number 2. It's pan-troglodyte 1 and 12 and 13 combined, the homologs. So he has got to know that transcript that he's saying the DDX11L2 gene that he says runs through there.
Yeah.
The canonical read for it, right? There's been no activity. The long read is a 3.9 RPKM, which is considered to be almost baseline, and it's only found in the testes, right? The tissues from the testes. That is insignificant. So he's trying to convince people there's an active gene that runs across the fusion site, and he's trying to say that that's the canonical read, and it's straight up fuckery.
It is. Well, he only reads the right side of it and only reads it in one direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually reverse transcripted.
Yep. Yeah. And he does that. Yeah. And
Steve read about this shit.
Good job, Steve, by the way. Because they don't, and nobody because we sat in the room and he did that shit. Susan, of course, at the same time, there were things where she was like, what the fuck is this? At that point, she was like, what? And I'm sitting here, like, I had my phone and I was like, oh, I'm writing down my questions I'm going to ask this motherfucker, and she's like, what? And everybody else in there too was like, if you don't know this, if you've never heard these things before, you're like, oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds right.
I got to end this, Nathaniel. But I want to thank my live chat here. I want to thank Chad. I want to thank you guys listening. And again, my offer's out there, buddy. People want to come in and talk, and you're not a troll. I'm happy to have a conversation. I challenge every one of you people that have said I'm wrong. Go prove me wrong. I'm happy because I'm telling you, if you can show that I'm wrong, hey, more power to you. But I've been doing this for 6 years. Nobody's been able to do so. Nobody. And I'm not just bloviating on that. I'm not doing a apologist supreme. It's just like literally nobody's. How are you going to show that I'm wrong if you don't have a paper to show me? Come on, I have a collection of papers. But anyways, thanks guys. Thanks for watching, Chad. Appreciate it. And Tompkins, you're a liar. Good night.